It's raining 3-liter turbocharged engines at Harmonixx Tuning for the last couple of weeks. To my extreme left is a Stage 3 M340i that we're building for a customer of ours. Behind me is a 911 Carrera S that has come for a Stage 2 package. And the focus of today's video is going to be this S55 engine BMW M2 competition. If you guys have been wondering why there is no S55 build, which is the M2, the M3 and the M4 on our YouTube channel or our Instagram page, that is because the S55 engines in these cars actually have a massive issue in stock form. So the crank hub that sits on these cars actually has a tendency to spin, causing a jump in the timing, which could lead to a blown engine in stock form as well. For the last 7 years, we have been actively rejecting customers with an S55 engine from upgrading their cars unless they actually upgrade the crank hub with an aftermarket part that does not spin. Luckily for us today, this particular car has already had an aftermarket crank hub installed on it. And today we start the tuning process of this car, and the first step in that procedure is to basically unlock the DME. So some of the later DMEs in the BMW S55 engine cars were locked via bench mode. And for that reason, we have to remove the DO88 intercooler over here and get access to the ECU pins over there so that we can unlock the ECU over bench so that we can tune it. The older way of unlocking these DMEs over bench would involve pulling out the intercooler as well as the intake manifold completely out of the car, as the DME on these cars is installed under the intake manifold. However, today we are not going to be doing that because we have a plug-and-play cable over here that we are going to directly insert into the ECU without having to remove the intake manifold of the car. We have connected our bench cables to the car's DME and to the laptop via the B-flash. Now let's unlock the ECU via bench mode and put the ECU connectors back into the car. We've finished unlocking the ECU over bench. Now we're going to put the ECU connectors back, the intercooler back into the car, and basically start with the rest of the build. Unlocking these MEVD ECUs is basically a two-step process. The first step was to basically get direct access to the ECU so that we could flash a bench file, which we did earlier in the day. Now we have a OBD base file which we're going to flash to the ECU, and that will allow us to do OBD unlocking on the ECU and allow us to flash the boot mode tunes onto the car. When the car came to us, it already had an Akrapovic catback, an Akrapovic mid-pipe, and as well as an Eventuary intake already installed on the car. We supplied the DO88 intercooler that was also installed by the client. However, we had to take that off to basically bench lock the DME yesterday. Now that we have put back the DO88 intercooler, what we'll be installing today is the VSRF downpipes, the auxiliary cooler, and a radiator from DO88. So we've removed the underbelly panels on the car so that we can get access to the downpipes. The first step today is going to be to install this DCAT VRSF downpipes. If you take a close look at the downpipes, these downpipes also come with a proper heat shield on them as well. We are done installing the downpipes on the car. Now let us remove the front bumper and do the radiator and the auxiliary cooler install. It's 10 PM on a Saturday evening and our team decided to finish majority of the work today itself. We've finished fitting the DO88 auxiliary radiator. We've also fitted the main radiator on the car and almost everything on top is fitted as well. So Monday morning, we will just have to fit the bumper and put the car back onto the dyno so that we can tune it. We are done fitting all the hardware on the car. Now let's start the car and hear what the exhaust sounds like with the downpipes. Now that we have flashed the XHP DCT tune, let's turn off the ignition for about 10 seconds and then we'll crank the car back again to see if the engine starts. If the engine starts, that means the flash went through successfully, and if in case the engine does not start, that means there was some trouble in flashing the DCT tune and we might have to do a reflash. Everything seems to be working fine right now. So now we are going to start loading the boot mode license and then we'll basically flash the stage 2 OTS tune and see what the car does on the dyno. A little bit of a backstory on this M2 competition build. As most of you are already aware, we do not tune any S55 engines unless and until there is an aftermarket crank hub installed on this car. We do not undertake crank hub installs on these cars. Hence, we had sent the car out to a different shop to basically install the crank hub. And what we realized was when we put the car back on the dyno after installing the auxiliary radiator and the secondary radiator was the car was misfiring like crazy on the dyno. So we initially presumed that the coil packs and the spark plugs might have been an issue on the car, and we ordered the plugs from BMW and the coil packs. However, BMW had only 3 new coil packs available with them. Coil packs and the spark plugs on this car, a lot of the parts have to actually come off. So first, to begin with, we have to remove the charge pipes over here. We have to remove the intake, the brace on top had to come off, and then basically you remove this cover and get access to all the coil packs and the spark plugs that are underneath this particular cover. We started removing all the spark plugs and we realized that some of them had basically oil on them, which means the valve cover seal that was under this was not fitted correctly by the previous shop that had undertaken the work. So then we proceeded to remove the spark plugs on the car, and spark plug 1, 5 and 6 had some oil on them. But what was most shocking was when we removed the spark plug number 6, we were shocked to see what had happened with the spark plug. So when we took off spark plug number 6, we were shocked to notice that the side electrode and the center electrode were almost touching. So basically this issue comes up when the plug is installed incorrectly. So the correct way to install a plug in any of these modern day engines is to basically use a magnetic tool like this, which basically sits on the plug and holds it tight. So when you actually shake it, the plug does not drop off. Then what you do is you slowly lower the plug here, tighten a few threads and then tighten it all the way. The other alternative way to do it, if you do not have a magnetic tool like this, is to basically put the coil pack and the spark plug together like this, insert the spark plug into the chamber and then basically tighten a few threads, pull out the coil pack and then use your tool to basically tighten the plug all the way. What seems to have happened on this car is, since cylinder 6 is all the way down here, somebody seems to have just taken the plug like this and just dropped it into the cylinder. So when the plug was dropped into the cylinder, basically the side electrode has gone and hit the portion of the head and bent this entire side electrode in a way that it actually ends up touching the center electrode over here. So we ordered 6 spark plugs and 3 coil packs from BMW because they had only 3 coil packs in stock for the S55 engines. And what ended up happening is when we unboxed the plugs, we found that 5 of the plugs were mildly used. So we brought this to the notice of the owner and they spoke with BMW as well. However, since the car has to be delivered today at any cost, as there is a wedding in the family tomorrow, we decided to put the plugs as is. What we also did was we changed the coil packs on cylinder 1, 3 and 6 as those had the most number of misfires on the car. So after fixing all of these issues, we basically took the car out for a test drive around 11 PM last night and everything seemed to be running fine. So we came back to the workshop, loaded the car on the dyno and did about 3 pulls on the dyno, and again we saw no misfires and the car picked up decent amount of power and torque while at it with a stage 2 OTS tune. So last night we hadn't installed this cover, so basically we had to take off the charge pipes again, put everything back together, and now we are going to fill some 95 RON fuel on the car and basically dyno test it again and show you guys what the car made post the tune. We did a few pulls on the dyno with the car and the car seems to be running perfectly fine. We just flashed a new tune with some updated changes. Now let us dyno this map and see what numbers it makes. So finally, all the testing on the M2 competition is done and the car is running perfectly fine. With our stage 2 tune and all the hardware that is installed on the car made about 462 horsepower and 742 Nm of torque. Let's take the car off the dyno, give it a quick wash and do a test drive before we send the car off to Cochin.
Let's take a look at the dyno charts. The black curve represents a bone stock M2, whereas the green curve represents this particular car's dyno chart with all the hardware mods installed but still on the stock ECU and the TCU tunes. When we look closely at the curves between 3000 to 4000 RPM, you will notice that the hardware mods actually caused a drop in power and torque. As explained in an earlier video on the M340i's, whenever there is a restriction removal on the intake or the exhaust side, the turbo starts to spool up much quicker and thus overboosts. When the ECU sees the overboost condition, it automatically shuts the throttle to prevent the turbo from overspinning, and that is what causes the drop in power and torque. So to all those of you who think that plonking in mods on the car will magically make your engine gain power, will be sadly disappointed, as the S55 engines don't seem to like whatever you throw at it without a proper ECU tune. Now let's take a look at the horsepower curves to see what happens once we flash our stage 2 ECU and TCU tunes. You can immediately notice that the engine makes excellent gains right from boost onset all the way up to redline. While the stock car made 398 horsepower, with the stage 2 tune and the hardware installed on the car, the engine made a very healthy 463 horsepower on the 95 RON map. So to conclude, with all the hardware mods and tunes installed on the car, the engine made a peak gain of about 65 horsepower and a max gain of 70 to 90 horsepower, thus making this car a whole lot of fun to drive on the roads. These are the torque curves, and just like we noticed with the horsepower curves, we made excellent gains of up to 150 Nm from a bone stock M2. That said, while driving on the street, we did feel that this humongous 700 plus Newton meters of torque being pushed only to the rear two wheels was a bit too much to handle on a daily basis. This much torque just lights up the rear tires when you go wide open throttle, thus making it very difficult to keep this car moving in a straight line. And here we have both the HP and the torque curves on the same chart, so we can see how we've achieved excellent gains with our stage 2 package all the way up to redline. So to conclude, the S55 engine, being a proper M engine, gets a twin turbo setup from BMW and does make a lot more power than the B58 engines, which run a single turbo that come in the M340i, Z4, etc. with similar kind of mods. While the B58s peak out at about 430 horsepower and 700 Newton meters on a 95 RON map with full bolt-on mods, the S55 engines make a clean 30 to 40 horsepower more. And for those of you who recognize this M2 and were wondering what it made on the tuning box it had earlier, plus the throttle controller, let's clear the mystery on that as well. As you can see from the graph in front of you, the stage 2 ECU tune made an excellent 30 to 40 horsepower more all the way up to redline and a whooping 70 Nm more torque over the tuning box.
So we have come out on a test drive with the M2 competition. Just wanted to check how the car behaves on the road and how it's able to put down 750 Newton meters of torque. A lot of people are under the misconception that we only test and work on cars on the dyno. We don't just work on the cars on the dyno. We also take the cars out on the roads and test them thoroughly on the road as well. In efficient mode, the full system exhaust sounds pretty nice. There is not a lot of drone. In fact, I don't think there is any drone that we've heard until now. But once we open the valves, the exhaust just gets way too loud for my personal liking. We have a tunnel coming up ahead, so let's switch to Sports Plus mode and we'll make you guys listen to the exhaust note. Let's do some tunnel runs. The OEM pops and bangs on the car with the stage 2 tune were basically too aggressive, and the duration of the pops and bangs also was too lengthy. So I changed the settings a little bit just to make it burble a lot lesser and with less aggressiveness as well. Around the corner, if you throttle, the way the car steps out is just insane. I think it's a crime to be putting out 750 Newton meters on rear wheel drive cars, if you ask me honestly. to show you guys a small difference between BMW's design language between the older F Series M generation cars versus the G Series M cars. The F Series look a lot elegant and classy, whereas these cars are modern, futuristic and too in your face and probably not to everyone's liking. But what makes the G Series cars really special is the all-wheel drive system coupled with the S55 engine and that brilliant ZF8 gearbox. What's really special about these F Series M cars is they are rear-wheel drive and they're basically very tail-happy and are a lot fun to drive provided you know how to handle these cars. However, if you're one of those drivers who want to put over 1,000 horsepower, then you definitely will have to go in for something in the G Series BMWs because the all-wheel drive can put the power down way better than the F Series can. Let us know in the comment section which exhaust note you prefer. The S55's full system Akrapovic exhaust, or the S58's Akrapovic full system exhaust. Working on this build has had its highs and lows. We were really excited to start working on the S55 engines finally. However, we were also very worried with the condition the car came to us in. Luckily for us, our team did a stupendous job in putting the car back together on time and fixing all the issues that the car came to us with. The car finally is going to leave us and head back to Cochin just in time for the wedding that begins tomorrow. We hope you guys enjoyed watching this video on the M2 competition. Kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay tuned for more such car content.